back to Martins and More. My name's Maury Rutch.
And I'm Spoon Phillips.
And this episode is brought to you by the Martin 00042. The Martin Reimagined 00042 has a rich, resonant voice with standout elegance. The ornate design of the 42 series adds panache to the classic tone of East Indian rosewood back and sides, a solid spruce top, and scalloped X-bracing. The stunning abalone pearl top inlay offers exquisite style with complex tone. For more information on the Martin 00042, please visit maurysmusic.com today. Hey Spoon, what's going on today?
Well, if you want more information about the 00042, you can always ask me. It's a wonderful instrument. When they first came out, they had the same specs as the Eric Clapton model in terms of the neck, but in the what's today's style 42, with that beautiful abalone snowflake pattern that was originally on pre-war 45s. So from the front, it looks like a late 1930s 00045. And I've always loved that look. But of course today it has the high performance neck, which combines the comfortable modified low oval profile with the high performance fingerboard taper that is 1 3/4 inch at the width, like the old 00042, but it's only 2 1/8 at the 12th fret. So a much sleeker profile. So it's a much faster neck, narrower string spacing with 2 5/32, and compared to the old 2 1/4, and an extremely popular model for those who can afford the opulence of that level of exquisite tone woods with the Indian rosewood and the spruce top, and that level of opulence in terms of that beautiful abalone inlay all over the headstock fretboard in front of the guitar. Other than that, I'm doing great. How are you?
I think we're both doing great now. We're going to drool over that guitar all through this episode, and it's a shame this episode has nothing to do with the Martin 00042, so stay focused, Spoon. Don't be talking about the guitars I'm talking about with your half a mind on the 42, and if I talk to you later and it just sounds like you're just playing this really cool Lawrence Juber stuff in your mind on the 00042 in Nazareth under the sunshine, I'm going to stop you in your tracks. But it's going to be a good show. I was thinking that we should talk about some hidden gems in the Blueridge line, and we can dedicate this show to the top 10 reasons you've been telling people why you'd want to own a Blueridge guitar. Would you like to talk about Blueridge Hidden Gems, or would you like to recap your top 10 list with the Blueridge?
Well, that's an excellent question, but I'm going to interrupt you, and I am going to not stay focused for a moment because you mentioned LJ. Just a shout out to Lawrence. Lawrence Juber recently performed in Nazareth, Pennsylvania at the Moravian Historical Society at a special event. And I so wish I could have gone, but I'm on special assignment out of town down south. And a shout out to John Galella, who filled me in on it, invited me to come, but I couldn't make it. But he did bring his custom Martin OM to LJ so he could check it out. And they got a very cool photo together. So sorry I couldn't be there, Lawrence, but perhaps I'll catch you next time you come east. So anyway, what I'd like to do is we're down to the number one reason on my list, my top 10 list of why you can or should own a Blueridge guitar. So I would like to go over the previous 9 in order, leading up to the number one reason. But I know that we had talked about doing a show like the Hidden Gems in the Martin lineup. That would be a Hidden Gems in the Blueridge lineup. So do you think you could come up with Hidden Gems in the Blueridge lineup, like 10 of them? I'll list one of the reasons, and you list what one of the guitars that you think is one of the gems of the Blueridge lineup. What do you think?
I can't really answer that because I'm still mourning the fact that John reminded me 3 times about that Lawrence Juber concert, and I completely forgot.
Wah, 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 wah.
Oh, man. Seriously.
Well, yes, I know we both missed a great show, but let's perk up and take a look at Spoon Phillips's top 10 reasons to buy or own a Blueridge guitar. Reason number 10 for owning a Blueridge guitar: parlor guitars. Parlor guitars in these days refer to bodies and neck links that are smaller than what you would typically see on an acoustic guitar today. However, because of the ukulele popularity, smaller and smaller guitars have become more and more popular. And Blueridge makes some really cool guitars that are smaller than normal guitars. And they, in their historic series, they're known as the Earthquake guitars because they hearken them back to the early 20th century and the San Francisco earthquake. And I'm not exactly sure why they decided to pick that specific event in the early 20th century. But the great San Francisco earthquake in 1906, if you've never seen the classic movie San Francisco with Clark Gable, check it out. But these are really cool guitars that harken back to the late 1800s and early 1900s when people played smaller guitars that were designed to be played in the parlor. And though traditionally nowadays they tend to be bigger than they really were back then, they're about on par with what Martin would call a size 0 guitar today, an O. And so can you tell us what would you say is your first pick as a Blueridge gem?
Well, I got to tell you, it's perfect timing. BR-341 is the first on my list of hidden gems at Maury's Music. When I say that, these are gems that are just hidden just a little bit, maybe really nice Blueridge models that just sometimes get overlooked. If you found our earlier podcast on some of the Martin hidden gems, the theme here is there are a lot of guitars to pick from, and sometimes a guitar just gets overlooked more than it should, doesn't get the accolades it deserves. And if I'm on the phone with someone or answering questions in email, I think the BR-341 is the first guitar I want to talk about today that doesn't get mentioned often enough, frankly. It's just a really nice little guitar. It's mahogany back and sides, solid Sitka spruce top. And when you look at the series that contains the 300s, you have 341, you've got 361, which is the rosewood version, and the 371 is the dressed up pearly version of the 361. So of these three, it's the only mahogany variant. And maybe years ago it sold better than it does, but at least going back to recent memory, we've had a lot of conversations with people talking about guitars of this size, and the BR-341 just seems to be overlooked a little bit too much, and I thought it deserved some airtime, so it gets front and center, first attention here on the podcast, 341 from the Blueridge lineup.
So, and this is from the historic series, this has a 1 7/8 inch neck width. So it's basically got the neck width of a traditional Martin 12-fret instrument. And it has other, vintagey features, even though it's got a Sitka spruce top instead of an Adirondack spruce, as a vintage Martin might have had. But very cool guitar. You should definitely check them out. And so the 341, like you said, it's the mahogany version of their parlor guitars, or what they call their earthquake guitars. And that's a great choice because, of course, it's the most affordable of those three earthquake models. So very cool. So, okay. So number nine reason for owning a Blueridge guitar. The number 10 reason was the parlor guitars. Well, the number 9 reason is the Blueridge tenor guitars. Like the earthquake parlor guitars from bygone days, Blueridge makes 4-string tenor guitars based on the original C.F. Martin designs from the 1920s. Now, I know there'll be serious vintage experts that will call me on that, saying, well, the original tenor guitars didn't have the traditional Martin shape. They had a weird shape. But I'm talking about the ones that went on to be regular Martin models. And that remained, they remained popular and had a great resurgence during the great folk boom of the late 50s, early 60s. I think most people my age or a little older will immediately think of the Kingston Trio, which always featured that Martin tenor guitar. For modern listeners, these tenor guitars that are 4 strings and they're tuned like a tenor banjo, and they were originally designed for banjoists who wanted to transition over to playing guitar when banjos were going out of favor and guitars were coming in the late 20s. And in jazz orchestras and dance bands. But in the folk scene, they realized you can get this great harmony going with a 6-string guitar. And that has found its own resurgence in modern times. And for those who are familiar with Karen Hogue, the excellent music journalist with Fretboard Journal and Acoustic Guitar Magazine and all that, and eventually got her degree in musicology, she can be found on YouTube, many YouTube videos of her just playing her Blueridge tenor guitar that she really, really loves. And so you should check those out when you can. I think they're a very cool guitar. I love that old one, and I've thought about getting a tenor now and again. And I would certainly get a Blueridge tenor if I could. Now, would you happen to have a Blueridge tenor among your gems?
How did you know? BR60T is second on my list. I love how this is just so intertwined. I hope we don't fall off a cliff after a couple more selections and you start rattling off all these guitars I can't come back with. But yes, BR60T, it wasn't necessarily at this part of my list, but the list has no real rhyme or reason. There's no order of importance or that sort of thing. BR60T, if I'm being really truthful, which I like to try to be, the T's, the tenor guitars in general, really seem to move through our store very hot and cold. We'll sell a few of them in a very short span and then sit on them for a while. But the BR60T today gets the award of, hey, don't forget about me. It's one of those instruments that really doesn't come up a lot in conversation. I quite honestly have to think, like, when we do get a popularity surge and start selling tenor guitars, in short spurts, we're either the last guy with them in stock, or there might be something that every once in a great while, the way Google works, there's a big forum post somewhere, or there's a lot of activity on this kind of model, and then we do enjoy being found on the search engines when people do go looking. So we don't have a lot of foot traffic in our local area anyway, and the people that are in tune with me and the guys that I know are guitar players that would call me and ask me about anything we have in stock, it's almost never happened that they've asked for a tenor guitar at all. And I actually started getting into the idea, maybe I'll take one home or at least play one here after work off and on. I got a little bit interested in ukuleles a few months ago, and I thought maybe I could take that interest and convert it over to playing this. This doesn't help me at all. I don't believe that knowing how to play ukulele gives you an upper hand playing a tenor guitar, but I'm looking at the specs and trying to come up with something clever to say on the broadcast. Spoon, how many times have you ever heard anybody here say the nut width is 1 17/64 and the scale length is 22.9? What a weird instrument. It's just such an outlier. Don't let me make you think that other tenor guitars have a lot of popularity here, but especially the BR60T. Just it's like on the island of misfit toys, so to speak.
Well, I do know you mentioned the tuning. They're originally designed to be tuned as a tenor banjo, but people can come up with their own tunings. I know definitely people who experiment with alternate tunings with that instrument, and some people basically put on strings that allow them to tune it to the bottom 4 strings of an acoustic guitar. So you can certainly do that as well. Put a capo on it again, and when you're playing in concert with other people, you can use them to get some really cool tonal texture and high-end shining, sounds. In this case, we're talking about a rosewood instrument. So you have a rosewood back and sides, and a Sitka spruce top. It's got a mahogany neck, and it's got dot fret position markers on the rosewood fingerboard. So you're basically talking of what could be, for all intents and purposes, a something like a Style 21 Martin back in the day. But so yes, they're definitely unusual. They're for people who do like to experiment, people who are playing in ensembles, and I think it's a very cool guitar. So I'm not surprised that you had at least one tenor on a list, if not all of them, that you would consider hidden gems. They're one of the few manufacturers that make a tenor guitar at a reasonable price. There's some other people who make tenors out there, but they're abnormally, expensive typically. Okay, so here we are with reason number 8 for owning a Blueridge guitar: distinctive styling. I think of the many brands out there that were clearly inspired by Martin designs and Martin look. I think Blueridge has a very cool way of giving you things that look along the lines of a 0018 or D45 or something along those lines, or 28, but they're always just a little different. And in this case, they have, of course, their unique headstock designs. It depends on the series that you're in, but they have these designs that are abstract, and yet they sort of are evocative of either botanical themes or similar to torches and fountains, and that, the sort of thing that you would have seen on vintage banjo, fancy vintage banjos and mandolins, or on the Martin models that had the Martin famous torches from the 20s. But then you can also get to the very classic look with the dots on the fingerboard and the black and white plies, black picards, or their version of a tortoiseshell picard, which to me looks like it was inspired by the leopard skin, what I called the leopard skin pickguard that was on Tony Rice's famous D28 that was owned by Clarence White before him. So number 8 would be distinctive styling. So give us a Blueridge hidden gem that we can talk about its styling.
How would you like to hear about the Blueridge BR43CE?
Oh, well, yes. Remind me of the BR43CE. Obviously, it's a cutaway with electronics. But what is the styling of and the specs of a BR43CE?
Well, I would consider the styling, depending on what end of the guitar you're looking at, to be very understated and elegant, or in the direction of over the top. And in years past, especially maybe 10 years ago, you could find some headstocks from Blueridge that made people think, oh, that's too much. But the BR43CE, it's got the Blueridge script logo, and I don't know if it's a flower pot or kind of a torchy. It's either a torch pot or a flower. Why do you mash up those other two words? It kind of gives you the beginning of an outline where if you let the artist go a little bit longer, this might have become too much to look at, but it's a very understated. For having a decorative headstock, it's understated compared to what they could have been. There are certainly some models where you can barely see the wood. So this is an instrument where you get a slightly fancy headstock, and then everything else about this instrument really just it's less is more. It's a very 21-ish style look, or 18-ish. You're going to have laminated mahogany back and sides, a solid Sitka spruce top. You'd mentioned the cutaway with the electronics. It's the cutaway electronic version of whatever the opposite of Hidden Gem is. They do really well, and we do really well with the BR43. When you take the cutaway away and you just get the standard BR43, that's a much better seller for us. But the cutaway electric version here, it sounds almost identical to the BR43, and I'm not sure if I'm talking trends or if this is something that's going to be very consistent across, years and decades. I think whenever we do offer a guitar, both with the cutaway and without, at least in our little store, we definitely do better with the guitars that are not cut away. So the 43CE, I'm sure a lot of people look at this and think, if I'm not going to be playing on stage, or maybe that's too much of a rock look for me, and the traditional look of the cutaway being missing might be a little bit more attractive to them. But for whatever good reasons, we definitely see the BR43CE is a hidden gem and just doesn't get thought of as much. I can actually remember not very long ago somebody asking us about guitars in this price point, and we mentioned a couple of the Rhodes series from Martin, some of the X series, and then the 43, both CE and non-cutaway, and they just quickly dismissed the cutaway. So I think it really does bear mentioning that a lot of customers and a lot of players aren't into the idea of a cutaway at any price, and I think that just puts this guitar at a little bit of a disadvantage, at least as far as popularity. Ironically, you can play further up the neck and do more with a cutaway than you can with the other version, but this guitar just doesn't see a lot of attention consistently here at Maury's Music.
Well, that's interesting to me because I'm definitely what you often use the word outlier. I probably will never buy another guitar that doesn't have a cutaway, and I definitely need cutaways, and I don't need them all the time, but I need them when I need them, and certainly if I'm playing with other people. And when I was gigging with the actor Paul Yukon Jr., I and the other guitarists needed our cutaways all the time, playing sideman, doing, we were doing Ellington and Fats Waller and that kind of stuff, but not always. I mean, we played Bob Dylan, and those more contemporary artists as well. But I certainly need one for my fingerstyle stuff. And you were mentioning the looks of this guitar, and it is interesting because it's an unusual headstock for Blueridge. You have like you said, the very pretty Blueridge script logo, but then you get right above it what is sort of a flower head with two leaves, except it's white. So it could also be kind of torch-like, but very small above the Blueridge. And then you get this abstract design, attractive abstract design that you might. It's hard to say what it is. I don't think it's a torch. I don't think it's botanical, but it is genuinely abstract in the sense that it's evocative of both of those sorts of things. But it's not very large. It's tasteful. It works very well with the large white dot fingerboard. And otherwise, it basically looks similar to Style 18 that Martin was using. Well, really, maybe like you said, 21, because it's got a dark fingerboard and bridge, and a black pickguard to go along with it. So it looks kind of like the 18s, but it doesn't have that. It doesn't have the rosewood, blondish rosewood fingerboard and bridge that you would get out of an 18 from the era of the black pickguards. So again, similar to when I was talking about the styling, it's unique. And then onboard electronics, I would think this would be a great guitar for people who need a stage guitar that want to be able to plug in and will be playing through all kinds of different sound systems. And we all know how, for the most part, unless you're very lucky, your plugged-in sound in the back room of a bar or in a small theater isn't going to really sound like your acoustic guitar unplugged. So for somebody who's got a really nice acoustic guitar that doesn't want to take it on the road, doesn't want to take it into roadhouses, and is primarily going to be playing through pickups, I think this is a absolute bargain of a guitar for plug-and-play electronics with a cutaway. And so I'd say, check it out. If you are in need of an acoustic electric with a cutaway, and so that's a very cool option. So that's distinctive styling.
Now you're making me want one. You're good.
Well, I take checks. So reason number 7 for owning a Blueridge guitar: the awesome soft shell cases. Now these guitars come in. You have 2 styles of these soft shell cases, but the Pro Tour BV 1012 Deluxe is my choice for a soft shell case. I absolutely love my case. I keep my most expensive Martin that I still own in it, and it is it would have to be a short scale triple O, but this can accommodate a triple O or an OM, long scale OM, and they have a wonderful Nuhyde, Nuhyde, I think is the brand spelling of the material. It's faux leather, and I've had multiple strangers come up to me and say, "Wow, is that leather?" And and they're really shocked when I say, "No, it isn't." I think officially they're 100% waterproof, but they're very water resistant. I have definitely had this thing out in the park, and it's gotten rained on, and it's got water coming off of trees and stuff like that. It wipes clean very clearly. It looks like beautiful tanned blonde leather. Absolutely love it. I love the pocket on it. Is big enough for, like right now in my little pocket, zipper pocket, which is, you could probably fit 3 or 4 decks of cards in there and have room on the side. But I keep my string winder, my clippers, a little pouch with a small Neumann condenser mic in it. I can keep my capo in it and my string puller. All of those will fit in there. It's big enough for a pedal, and maybe a capo and something along those lines, and maybe something else. The big pocket is not just a zipper with a very thin thing, barely big enough to fit in a thin music book. You can put a lot of stuff in there. So I'm really happy with those. I'm happy with the quality of the zippers. I'm happy with the nice spongy interior. and I think they're really very cool cases. The BV-10-2, the Pro Tour Standard, isn't as fancy. It's not as beautiful. It's not as probably not as protective, but it's still a very well made case. And so it depends on the level of guitar that you're getting from Blueridge. But if you're lucky and you know someone, Maury's Music might sell you one, because once in a while people upgrade to more expensive hardshell cases. And do you still have some of these cases available, possibly for sale at Maury's Music?
I think only a few now, and that's exactly how it does happen, where somebody might buy a BR60 and trade it up 50 or $60 and get a hardshell case, and then we're stuck with the bag. So yes, at times we do have a little bit of a surplus, but it made me laugh a little bit when you said, I know you just used it as put it in someone's mind how big this bag is when you said 3 or 4 decks of cards. And it reminds me of those stories John Hall would say about being at Martin Fest and being a builder and repair guy, and somebody coming out of the corner, do you have a truss rod wrench? Do you have Waverly's? I could see somebody saying, help, do you have 4 decks of cards?
And John might. Another thing I'll just say before we close this reason down, the straps on my guitar are the most comfortable backpack straps I've ever had on anything, backpack or guitars. I'll forget I'm wearing this guitar. It's so comfortable, and it doesn't sit up too high. Of course, it sits up above my head, but not like some other ones that I have seen. So they're definitely comfortable. I'm a big fan. And you talk about expensive hard shell cases. You have to spend an enormous amount of money to find a hard shell case that has the humidity containment of these soft shell cases. They're not absolutely airtight, but they do. My humidifiers, when I have to put them in, do seem to last longer when they're in these cases than when they're in something like a guide style case. So that's a very cool reason. Number 7 is the comfortable cases. And what's your next gem of the Blueridge line?
I don't want to go a lot further without talking about the Blueridge BR63.
BR63, well, tell me about it.
The BR63 takes everything we liked about the BR43CE, but trades in the cutaway and electronics for rosewood back and sides. So being a 2-digit number, BR63, we have a laminated rosewood back and sides and a solid spruce top. And I don't know if it's just coincidence, it must not be, but some of the rosewood on these laminate contemporary series guitars, like the BR63, they just look wildly amazing. And maybe if you really went back and took a look at all the solid instruments Blueridge builds versus the laminates, maybe there's just a cost-effective measure to when you're buying laminates, you can buy better-looking pieces, or I don't know exactly where the choices come in. But you can look at some of the stuff on our website now as we're taping this in late October. This is probably going to air sometime in mid-November. The BR63, even if it didn't look as good as it does, it's just a really great little... It's technically a triple O with Blueridge, but they're going to be long scale. But if you took one of my favorite guitars from Martin called the OM28 and gave it laminate back and sides and asked Blueridge to build it, that's really what you would have here. So it's really another really nice example of understated styling. But the BR63, I think some of the Blueridge BR63s have had some of the best looking wood in our store. And when I say this next part, I really do mean it. At any price point, in any brand. I mean, some of these virtual tours we do on Wednesdays when I'm showing some of the current inventory on YouTube, and I'm tuning these guitars up on a Wednesday and I'm looking them over and I'm going to take some high resolution pictures for the slides. And I just always, I'm just in amazement at the way these guitars look, like the choice pieces of wood you're getting for, well under $1,000. It's really... I can't believe we're talking about this on a program called Hidden Gems. Why aren't you guys asking me about this model? I know that the 163 gets a lot of attention being solid back and sides, but don't sleep on the BR63.
Well, what do you know? What do you know about that? Yes, that's a very good point about how with the laminate guitars you can get some really good looking wood on the, as the final layer on the outside, the veneer that goes on the outside of the laminated wood. Also, They are easier to take care of than solid wood guitars, as well as being more affordable. When I say easier, they are much more resistant to changes in humidity and temperature, and even, heaven forbid, knocking into the side of a table or something with your guitar. So they're less prone to cracking and less prone to the ravages that can come from the fluctuations in humidity and temperature. So that's very cool. That's a very nice guitar to put on this list. What's an affordable laminated rosewood Blueridge model.
Well, Spoon, this has been a lot of fun so far, and I love finding hidden gems, but would you mind if we find time to play 20 questions?
Oh, yes. Let's play 20 questions.
I actually have a special guest waiting in the wings, just dying to play 20 questions. Would you please help me welcome our friend from Martin vs. Martin fame, Marshall Fleisher?
Well, hey, Marshall, how you doing?
Hey, Spoon. I'm doing great. Maury, thank you for that warm canned welcome.
We thought it would be fun today to have a special guest play 20 questions with us. Spoon, go easy on him, would you?
Not on your life. Okay, yes, we'll see what we can do about that. So most of our listeners are familiar with this game where usually one of us picks a Martin guitar that's still available out there for sale in the world, and the other has up to 20 questions to try to guess what model that is, and up to 3 guesses of specific model names, which count toward those 20 questions. Normally, the smart guy, Maury, or the wise guy, Spoon, is doing the asking and the other's doing the guessing. But of course, today we have the extremely talented Marshall on with us, Marshall Fleisher, and who we all enjoy very much on Martin's on Main, or if you're lucky enough to attend Martin Fest, getting to see him perform regularly and leading song circles and all that sort of thing at Martin Fest. So, are you ready for your maiden voyage into 20 questions?
I'm as ready as I'll ever be, Spoon, which is not very.
Okay, 20 questions are on the clock right now.
This will show just about how good I'm going to be at this game. All right. Would I use this model primarily for fingerstyle or for flat picking?
That I will have to say it's versatile enough for both.
Okay. Does this body size have 2 separate designations depending on the scale length?
That would be correct for guess number 2.
And
Smart.
does the model you're thinking of have a long scale?
That is a negative. That's 3 questions.
All right. Is the model you're thinking of a triple O?
That's 4 questions. That is correct. It is a short scale triple O.
Okay. Does this model have an ebony fingerboard and bridge?
This model has an ebony fingerboard and bridge. That's 5 questions.
Okay. Does this model have a composite carbon fiber and spruce bridge plate?
Ooh, that's 6 questions correct.
Are we talking about a 0028 Modern Deluxe?
That is 7 questions, and that is incorrect.
Oh boy.
Ooh.
Does this model have mahogany back and sides?
This model does not have mahogany back and sides at 8 questions.
Okay. All right. Does this model have rosewood back and sides?
This model has rosewood back and sides. That's 9 questions.
All right. Does this model have a torch inlay on the headstock?
This model at 10 questions has a torch inlay. In fact, it is a beautiful torch inlay on the headstock.
And I played one of these on June 3rd, 2022 with Maury taking video of me. This was at the Martin factory. It's a 0042 Modern Deluxe, and I want one.
That's exactly correct. With 11 questions, a 00042 Modern Deluxe.
Now, do I get one for correctly identifying it within 20 questions?
That's the only rule we forgot to tell you.
If I had remembered that, I might have picked the 0028, but you got me. Good work. Congratulations. Tell him what he's won, Don Pardo.
Marshall, please remind us of your shipping address before you leave.
And that's for the complimentary guitar pick, right, Maury?
Exactly.
Postage due.
Well, for anybody out there who's listening and also has can afford it or has a very generous relative, you can't do better, in my opinion, than a 00042 Modern Deluxe.
They're absolutely gorgeous, and they sound gorgeous. They play gorgeous. It's one of my all-time favorite necks, and I couldn't agree more.
Thank you so much, Marshall. We really appreciate you being here. You're setting a good example.
My pleasure, guys, and enjoy the rest of your podcast, and I'll catch y'all later.
Very good.
All right, man. See you Thursday.
Peace out.
See you Thursday. Over and out.
So here we are with I think the last one you chose, the BR63, was a great option for your list. I was surprised you didn't pick the BR60 myself, but maybe that's on your list. But here we have reason number 6. Speaking of sixes, reason number 6 for owning a Blueridge guitar is neck width options. Blueridge has your favorite neck width because you have guitars that have the 1 11/16 inch nut widths, which are very hard to come by these days. Martin used to have that as their default neck width. They've switched to 1 3/4 inch. And so there are only a few Martins left that are available for sale with a 1 11/16 inch nut width, and most of those have a mahogany top. But Blueridge offers 1 11/16 inch nut widths, but you can also get nut widths all the way up to 1 7/8 inch in the historic series. So you have a 1 3/4 inch in the pre-war series as well. So a variety of nut widths available, and you can even go all the way down to the tenors that you mentioned with the 1 9/32. So you can go to town when it comes to nut width options. And so that is my number 6 reason to own a Blueridge guitar. And what is your next gem for today?
Well, I don't know if it fits your plans, but I cannot hear you say 6 as many times as you did without saying Blueridge BR60.
Well, that's what I was hoping you'd say, because I think I would have put this on my own gems list. But go ahead, Don Pardo, tell us about the BR60.
Well, those dreadnought lovers out there know what I'm going to say next. Everything you thought that was great about the OM size, O size BR63 is just here and bigger. The BR60 is literally the dreadnought version of the BR63. So your time is as valuable as ours, and I don't want to repeat too many things that wouldn't make a lot more sense, but just know that if you like the styling and the general tone and voice of a BR63, but you might appreciate more volume, especially more volume in the sub-register, the bass, and the low mid-range, the BR60 has everything that you think the BR63 might be lacking. We all know all the stories about the dreadnoughts are for strumming and flat picking. The OMs are for fingerstyle and playing softly, and those rules are to be broken. Just tell people like Steven Stills you're not supposed to play fingerstyle on a dreadnought. The BR60 is still awfully versatile. And yes, without filling airtime for the sense of just babbling, if you like the BR160 and the other dreadnoughts in the Blueridge lineup, please also consider the BR60.
Well, I see that we're going a little long on the show. I guess I'm getting a little long-winded about our love of Blueridge guitars. So here are the top 5 coming up. And this will be a pretty quick one because this is the Blueridge warranty. And as a Blueridge dealer, why don't you tell us a little bit about the Blueridge warranty and how responsive the parent company for Blueridge is when it comes to warranty issues?
I can't tell you much because it almost never happens, but the times it does, I will say that Saga is very responsive to making sure their customers are happy, and I'm one of their customers as much as you are. So if you bought a Blueridge guitar brand new from an authorized dealer, rest assured they are very, very diligent. They want to make sure that you're happy. The long and short of it is you have to send your guitar back to them on your own dime, but they will turn it around very quickly and they will ship it back to you on their dime. And the times it has happened here at Maury's Music has been few and far between. And every time the customers took the time to let me know how everything worked out in the end, literally everybody that went through that process was very happy with it. And I can count on one hand how many times it had to happen in 20 years. But the warranty with Blueridge certainly is for real, and it's a very good reason to consider doing that and to consider buying it brand new from an authorized place. So I would definitely give it 2 thumbs up.
And here we come with the number 4 reason for owning a Blueridge guitar: gorgeous tone woods. You've already talked about how beautiful some of the rosewood looks on the laminated guitars, and frankly, how beautiful some of the mahogany looks on them. I think they do a wonderful job of getting that top layer veneer that just really looks beautiful with the banded mahogany and the really, really gorgeous rosewood. But I don't know, this is probably not a gem. It's certainly a gem in my mind, but not an overlooked gem. But I'm just going to say, gorgeous tone woods. You got to go into that historic series and look at a guitar like the BR-160A, the Adirondack top rosewood guitar is I think really gorgeous. And I like the looks of those guitars in general. But why don't you just talk a little bit about the BR-160A for me?
Ah, yes, the 160A, the guitar that was discontinued and brought back and discontinued, and then they declined to admit that it was discontinued. This is a model that basically had 2 or 3 lives. Saga eventually replaced things like the 160A with the 260. They replaced the 140A with the 240, and they replaced the 180A with the 280. And then without anybody looking, they brought back the BR-160A more than once. So it's a very unique instrument. Like you said, you're definitely correct about the specs. Adirondack top over solid rosewood back and sides. It's an outlier in the Blueridge lineup because depending on when you look for it, certain dealers might not have it. Some dealers might swear on a pile of Bibles it was discontinued and never came back. And then every once in a while, we'll feel the same way, and Saga will send us an email. How many do you want? Like, how many what do I want? We made a couple more. Like, you guys are confusing me now. But the BR-160A, we've been a dealer a long time, and that was probably one of our best sellers, quite honestly, up until about 6-7 years ago. So I can't blame you for liking it. The 160A's got a 1 3/4 inch nut. It's a lot more like the old Martin D28 Marquis, if you guys remember that guitar, but it doesn't have a long saddle, doesn't have a V-neck. But there aren't that many guitars in Martin's lineup that can compare to the BR-160A head-to-head, because when Martin gives you an Adirondack top these days, the other specs on the sheet don't line up at all. So if you like this idea, you really have to give the BR-160A a look. Not just because it's one of the best choices, it's one of the only choices and only ways to get into this kind of a guitar, certainly at this price point.
Now, this also has the Blueridge Banner headstock, which is by Blueridge standards, a rather sparse, tasteful headstock. It's basically a white scroll and with the Blueridge logo on it. So it's unique by their standards, but you also get their version of the snowflake fingerboard. And so that's very cool. And so it's kind of like those that D28 that Stephen Stills and Neil Young had both owned at one time or another, that had the aftermarket pearl inlay fingerboard on what was basically a D28. And so, so thank you for bringing that up. Do you actually have, totally forgot about them being discontinued. Do you actually have one of these in stock?
As of the time we're taping this, we do have one in stock, yes.
Oh, well, good. I didn't mean to throw a curveball there for you. But, okay, so cool model, gorgeous tone woods, as you will find across the Blueridge line. But in this case, Adirondack spruce. So reason number 3 for owning Blueridge guitar is the excellent craftsmanship. Whether you're all the way up at the top of their line with their most expensive models, or whether you're down at the bottom of the line with their most affordable models, you are getting extremely well-made guitars that rarely have problems. They have a great reputation for having reliable, stable instruments that sound good. They're made at a musical instrument factory that's been in business for many, many, many years by excellent craftsmen and craftswomen. And you could probably pick any gem from any level, and you're going to get a guitar with excellent Blueridge craftsmanship. So I would like to mention, this will be my second mention of, I don't know if this is will you consider this a hidden gem or not, but you had talked about the BR43CE and how it's not that popular. What about the 143CE?
I have that next on my list. Are you looking at my paper?
No, no, I am not.
Teacher, he's cheating. The BR143CE, it's the all-solid version of the BR43CE. And again, I don't want to beat a dead horse, but I really think the fact that this is a cutaway with a pickup, and you can also opt to get the same kind of guitar from Blueridge in a BR143, a more traditional look. Again, this is just our store talking. I don't mean to say for a moment that these guitars are slow sellers or hidden gems, across the entire Blueridge dealer network. I just mean our own experience here at Maury's Music when we have an opportunity to connect somebody with the right guitar the first time. The BR143CE, like its little brother, the BR43CE, gets overlooked, and it's hard to really quantify exactly why people will do certain things and why they will turn away from one product and go towards another. But our sales of the BR143 are, evidenced enough for me. I think the fact that maybe if you couldn't get a 143 any other way, the 143CE might sell better. The way our website works and the way that our customers choose guitars, the cutaway electronic version of both of these guitars, BR143 included, causes this guitar to make the Hidden Gems list.
Well, good. I'm glad, because you had mentioned the other one, and like I said, I'm a big fan of cutaway guitars. This gives you an acoustic electric guitar for plug and play on stage, but also it's going to give you a richer, fuller sound from the solid wood. And it's, I would say, you have to spend a lot of money to get something comparable from other guitar makers with a cutaway, solid back and sides and top. And so I'm glad we think alike. I'm sorry to hear that people are not that interested in this. I guess in general, probably in every guitar maker out there, cutaway guitars probably sell less than non-cutaway guitars. But I would think this would be also an excellent choice for someone who maybe not as their main guitar, but as their stage guitar, or when they need to play tunes in concert on a cutaway. So that's a very cool model. The number 2 reason for owning a Blueridge guitar, and I think the guitar we just mentioned certainly qualifies for this, and that's the Blueridge Tone. There are some people who love the Blueridge Tone more than anything else. It's definitely, I say, different than the Martin Tone, but it's still more Martin-esque than it is like any other kind of traditional, very old guitar company, like Gibson, for example, or Taylor, or so, those kind of guitars. I would say Blueridge is more comparable favorably with Martin, or more equatable with the Martin sound than it is other of the major manufacturers. Whether you're, again, on the more affordable models all the way up to what is Blueridge's deluxe models, they are truly well-made guitars that have, I'd say, a unique sound, but still a traditional sound. How do you describe it when people call you up to ask you about Blueridge and Blueridge Tone?
Oh, I would certainly say the Blueridge Tone is extremely heavily inspired. I won't say they copy Martin, because there are going to be some examples of the Blueridge lineup from top to bottom that might not be genuinely Martin infused, but really for the most part, we brought on Blueridge as a brand because we wanted to offer our customers another version, a less expensive alternative with a very similar sound. So we do use that as a jumping off point. If somebody wants the Martin Tone at a better price point, you can look at something like an OM28 and point somebody towards like a BR73 is a good example to pick a guitar right now. If you're looking at what Martin sounds like in general, and I know that's a big umbrella statement, and what Blueridge sounds like, most of the Blueridge guitars will sound like the Martin guitar that they're emulating or that they're modeled after. So you're going to find some examples of exemptions. There are certain guitars in Blueridge that don't really have a Martin that they look up to, but something like a BR73 would be the laminated back and sides version of really an OM42. A 0042 being short scale. The BR73, of course, is long scale, but something like a BR73, it certainly does pay a lot of homage to the rosewood, scallop-braced 000, auditorium size anyway. It does pay homage to the rosewood OM tone that you get in an OM42. So it's really very, very fair to say that for the most part, the Martin sound is alive and well in the Blueridge guitar lineup as much as it can be. And that's not to say for a moment that you don't have to buy a Martin to sound like Martin. You still do, but it's pretty awe-inspiring how close Blueridge can get in certain models and certain shapes. So the BR73, that's going to be my next on the list. Hidden Gems from Blueridge Guitar, and Martin tone is alive and well here.
Well, that's kind of this is going to segue into the number one reason that we've been leading up to. And I'm just going to mention right now the BR73 CE because it's a cutaway acoustic electric version. And I'm a big fan of cutaway acoustic electrics. So that's another great option. And that leads into, both of these guitars lead into the number one reason. And the number one reason, get ready with your drum roll, the number one reason, in my opinion, to own a Blueridge guitar is price. You've just mentioned it. You've led into this, whether you remembered what my number one reason it was or not. Number two reason I say is tone, because number one reason to own a Blueridge in my mind is the fact that they're so affordable for what you're getting, especially when you get up into the solid wood guitars with the forward shifted scallop bracing. I pointed out that one Adirondack top guitar. You try to find a comparable Martin, Taylor, Gibson. Then you get into the smaller makers like Collins, Huss, and Dalton. You're not going to get anywhere near Blueridge prices for solid wood instruments. And when you get down into their more affordable laminate back and sides with solid spruce tops, beautiful spruce on those. I just think it's the number one reason to own a Blueridge guitar. And you said so yourself. You brought them online at Maury's Music for that reason.
Absolutely. And if we're being apples to apples here, I do see on occasion a lot of people talking on the forums, on Facebook groups, that Eastman and Recording King are also in the conversation about if you want to get a good guitar at a good price point. And every time we see those kind of things, Lori and I would watch and keep our finger on the pulse. And we ask ourselves, if this catches some traction, and people are just not going to stop talking about Eastman, for example, or the Recording King thing just bubbles up and bubbles up. We kind of want to be able to be flexible. And if for some reason Blueridge starts to wane and Eastman becomes the next thing that just doesn't go away, we'll certainly try it. We just have not had enough reason to bring on another brand like Eastman. And we certainly haven't seen any decline whatsoever in Blueridge as far as tone, price point, quality control, and believe me, we have every opportunity. If at any time Blueridge just starts really dropping the ball, that's when we would certainly make a move and pivot, but it just has not happened. So in all these years, we really do believe that if you want to come to us for a really nice guitar and either Martin's price point is too much for you, or you could afford a Martin, but you don't want to spend that much money on a guitar, which is a lot of people, we still do think the Blueridge is the one to go with. And over the weeks, Spoon's been telling you he has one more reason after another. And hopefully, if we did anything right today, this whole episode just, mashed up all of those good reasons with, several examples of which guitars you should look at. I mean, this list is a combination or a collection of Blueridge guitars you don't hear of often enough, and they get overlooked. This is not to say that these are the Blueridge guitars that are our bread and butter or keep the lights on. That's another list entirely. These are the guitars that get overlooked. So you can imagine if this list, sounds inviting to you, There's probably a dozen or more Blueridge guitars that are just really, really appreciated every day like they should be. And it's for another podcast, but this brand, talking about 10 reasons to own them, I like everything you said.
Well, good. I'm glad. It was fun to do. I know my apologies for the episodes where we forgot to include one of those reasons for people who've been waiting for me to get through this list. And but that sometimes we just get too busy. Sometimes we literally just forget. And but this time we finally got through the list with the addition of some really cool Blueridge guitars. So thank you for indulging me with my idea, and I'm glad you actually had enough guitars to go along to fill out the show. So that was good.
Well, it's been just as much fun for me, and I really did have a good time talking today. And we hope you guys did too. If you find this program valuable, entertaining, just flat out fun, please consider sharing it with just one friend. And please go over to Apple Podcasts if you have a moment, if you're in the Apple universe or whatever they would call it. If you're an Apple guy or gal, please go over and give us a good review. We might even read your review on the air. Joe Mama writes, "Hey, how come no one ever gives you any reviews anymore on Apple Podcasts? What's the deal, brah?" Well, thanks for your comment, Joe. I wish I had an answer for you, but hopefully one of our listeners will hear your comment and become inspired. Spoon, at first I thought he was from Brooklyn, but the end of that message sounded like he was a surfer.
Well, you can actually buy Surf Brooklyn t-shirts, so maybe he's both.
What?
It's true.
On Lake Brooklyn?
So, yep, they show, it says Surf Brooklyn. I'm assuming that's a joke, unless I know there's, I got to say, my longtime college pal, Diane Muldrow, the famous children's author, she was living in Brooklyn when she took up surfing. And late in life, as a mature person, she always wanted to learn to surf, and she became a surfer. So they definitely have surfers in New York City. They have to go out, find a beach to do it at. But she learned to surf while living in New York City. So anything's possible when it comes to New York City.
Well, I should have known you'd have an anecdote for that.
But yes, I always picture, when I hear Surf Brooklyn, I always picture somebody on the East River, not doing a very good job of it. But, all right.
Ugh.
Well, speaking of the East River, it's time for me to start thinking about stuff I got to take care of in New York City. So,
from all of us at Maury's Music, thanks for listening.
Hear you later.
This has been a presentation of Maury's Music, your trusted source for Martin and Blueridge guitars. Find us online at maurysmusic.com.